Hello and welcome to DSR Daily. I'm David Rothkopf. I'm joined by Riley Fessler and Minna Stein. And as those of you join us daily or regularly know, we are all good news all the time. Right, Riley?
Well, we are today,
We,
but
we are
you know,
today.
your mileage may
And
vary depending on how long you listen to us.
If you listen just today, we might be able to trick new
yeah,
listeners into thinking that it's all positive all the time.
yeah. And even if you're not a new listener, maybe we could give you a little bit of boost because there was a bunch of good news yesterday. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about the good news. Which one of you guys gets the privilege of starting us off?
Me, I've got us covered today.
Okay.
Zoran Mamdani, a 34-year-old Democratic socialist, was elected the 111th mayor of New York City in a stunning upset over former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Mamdani's victory was cemented by an electric surge in voter turnout, approaching numbers not seen in half a century, with over 2 million New Yorkers casting ballots. He successfully built a new Democratic coalition, uniting younger voters of working-class immigrant enclaves in Queens, while also making major gains in working-class Black and Latino communities compared to the primary. Despite $40 million spent by super PACs supporting Cuomo, Mamdani's message focusing on affordability and his platform of free services ultimately prevailed.
You know, I was going to correct you yesterday, Riley, because you refer to Cuomo as Cuomo, adding a syllable that he doesn't deserve. But I don't have to because he's done. He's finished. He's out of American politics. That's a good thing. He's an odious person. The Mamdani win is a fantastic win. You know, the guy a year ago had a 1% approval rate. He was going nowhere. Nobody thought he had the slightest chance. There are videos of him launching his campaign, standing outside of a subway station in the Bronx or someplace, like holding up a placard, vote for me. It was sad. But with no money, good organization, being a good candidate, and doing the one thing politicians don't usually do, listening to the voters, Mamdani actually put together a campaign that spoke to the needs of real people. He ended up becoming the Democratic nominee, unseating the Democratic mayor of the city, Eric Adams, who we didn't even mention in this formula, and then going up against a former governor and beating him. And I would add that he beat him soundly. He got over 1 million votes, but he also, did it despite a massive turnout the vote effort by, billionaires and establishment politicians who were like, hey, wait a minute, who is this guy who's not listening to us? What's more, of course, they didn't quite realize that the reason that Mamdani was successful was due, in fact, in part because he was not listening to them, and that people wanted a change, and that a 34-year-old candidate spoke to their needs. So did a candidate who addressed issues of affordability in New York with a laser focus. It is a candidacy that's got lots to tell, not just, about New York City, which is, a sui generis among American political constituencies, but about what wins today, about the need for real change agents, about the need for generational change, about the need for clear messages, about the need to focus on affordability. And when we talk about other campaigns that happened yesterday, from people who are self-described moderates to people like Mamdani, you'll see that clear messaging, listening to the people, addressing affordability, and also calling out the profound corruption and flaws of the current president and his administration and the consequences it's got for real people. That was the winning formula. And that was a winning formula in state after state and for Democrat after Democrat. The Mamdani story is just perhaps the biggest of the stories, although that's debatable. but it had a lot in common with the other stories. So let's go to another one, Minna.
California voters overwhelmingly approved Proposition 50, a ballot measure that replaces the state's independent redistricting commission with a new Democratic-drawn congressional map projected to give the party up to 5 additional U.S. House seats. The victory, driven by Governor Gavin Newsom's $120 million campaign, marks a major win for Democrats in the national redistricting battle and caps a strong election night following key wins in Virginia and New Jersey. The new map will stay in effect through 2030, posing steep re-election challenges for several Republican incumbents in California.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite a remarkable story in and of itself because there was nothing really of note on the ballot. There wouldn't have been a big turnout. But Newsom made this an issue, and Californians responded, waiting in long lines to go and to cast their ballots for this proposition. And the message of the proposition was clear to the GOP that's trying to put their thumb on the scale. And it was, fuck around and find out. Democrats are going to play hardball too. If anybody was as good a communicator on these issues as Mamdani was in New York, it was Newsom in California. You may not like it. You may think he's too slick, whatever. But the reality is Newsom engineered an important campaign that sends an important message in America's most populous state, could amount to 5 more Democratic seats, could make it harder for the Republicans to try to gerrymander their way to maintaining their majority next year, and sends a message to a lot of other Democratic states, which is step up, don't get bullied by these people, don't allow them to play by a separate set of rules, and focus on the one thing that really matters here, and that's winning. Because only if you win do you get power, and only if you have power can you produce change. And this California election was about that. And it is good news, and it really rattled the President of the United States, and we'll get to that too in a minute. Riley?
Former Democratic Congresswoman and CIA officer Abigail Spanberger has been elected Virginia's next governor, becoming the state's first female chief executive and flipping control from the Republican Party. Spanberger's successful campaign focused on affordability and local economic issues while also linking her Republican opponent, Winsome Earl Sears, to President Donald Trump. Her victory, alongside Democrats sweeping the lieutenant governor and attorney general races, gives a boost to national Democrats and the party's centrist wing. The election highlighted Spanberger's pragmatism and moderate approach, with her emphasizing unity and her background in law enforcement and national security.
Yeah, a great victory, a significant victory in its own right. I'm sure everybody remembers when Virginia was considered a kind of purplish state. The last governor, of course, was a Republican. The candidate Spanberger ran against is a former lieutenant governor. A lot of Southern Virginia, in particular, is really quite MAGA. But something happened, and what happened was the Trump administration. What happened was bad results for the people of Virginia. What happened was government layoffs that affected a lot of Virginians, and a shutdown that affects lots of Virginians. And also a candidate, Abigail Spanberger, who has proven track record, who doesn't have to say she's tough, who doesn't have to say she's strong. Her background as a CIA officer communicated that when she was in the House of Representatives. Her record in the House of Representatives communicated that as a prelude to her candidacy. Her candidacy communicated that. And it helped carry Democrats to a resounding victory, with controlling something like now, 2/3 of the seat in the House of Delegates, which again has consequences for redistricting and so forth, carrying a controversial attorney general candidate to a victory by 6 percentage points. It is a big win, and with Mamdani, with California vote, with the New Jersey vote, and a bunch of other votes across the country, it heralds what was a highlight of what was an unbroken string of Democratic victories, coast to coast, a real repudiation of the president, but also a message that Democrats are going to organize and mobilize and produce great candidates and produce candidates, who are suited to their constituencies. Abigail Spanberger and Zoran Mamdani don't have a lot in common. That's fine. You want a New York candidate to win in New York and a Virginia candidate to win in Virginia, and you want a party big enough to embrace both of them, and you want them to be connected on critical areas like values, commitment to democracy, commitment to the rule of law, commitment to concerns about people and their daily lives, whether it's affordability or healthcare or other such issues. Really a great victory, and I'm sure Minute made you proud to be a part-time Virginian.
Yes, I used to live in Virginia and my family all lives in Virginia. So I was watching the race very closely and I was extremely, extremely excited. And as I mentioned yesterday, like I was following the AG race really closely because I really had no idea what was going to happen there. But of course, I hoped that the Democrat would win for, ability to sue the government and abortion, like all of those important things. So I was pleasantly surprised and did a major victory dance when the Democrats had success everywhere, but specifically in Virginia. So I was very pleased.
Sorry, we don't have that on videotape, folks. But perhaps next year, midterm election, maybe we'll get Minute's victory dance on video. But I would say, by the way, with regard to the Attorney General's race, which people said was too close to call and he won by 6%, or the New Jersey race, which people thought was too close to call, and the candidate in New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill, won by double digits, or the New York race, which people said was tightening, and it was not really tightening. Once again, we were exposed to polls that were wrong and commentators who were wrong, and also conventional wisdom that was wrong. And I don't think that should be lost. For the past year, we've been hearing from people saying, Democrats need young males to win, and young males hate wokeness, and they like WWE, and they're kind of assholes, and so you need to be kind of an asshole to win. Or Democrats are too into this trans stuff, and they need to get rid of that and stop talking about trans stuff. Well, the Virginia race was heavily about the trans issues. The Republicans brought them up again and again and again and again and again. And guess what? They got trounced. And guess what? Although women were the big advocates for Democrats in this country, where the margins of sort of young women voting for Democrats were huge, the margins of young men voting for these Democrats were also really significant. The women, may have been 75 or 80% young women voting Democrat, but with young men, it was 55 or 65% young men voting Democratic. So all this stuff that we heard day in and day out for the past year, as if it were gospel, bullshit. It was bullshit. And hopefully this will open our eyes and force us to look on the ground, talk to real people, see what's going on with real people, as opposed to listening to, commentators in the glass bubble of mainstream media. More? You got more?
We have a few more.
More.
After Republicans have suffered major losses in key state elections, widely seen as a referendum on his leadership, President Trump downplayed the results in a series of late-night social media posts. He blamed the defeats on the ongoing government shutdown and his absence from the ballot, while renewing calls to ban mail-in voting, impose voter ID laws, and eliminate the Senate filibuster. Trump also threatened to cut federal funding to New York City following Zoran Mamdani's projected mayoral victory, posting ominously, ... and so it begins.
I mean, truly, what a jerk. But, you knew that. There was some of what Trump said that was reflective of his character flaws, and some of it that should be of some concern to us. Obviously, the bit reflective of his character flaws was, he won't take responsibility for anything. And the very first thing he said was, well, I wasn't on the ballot. Like, if I were there, I would have won. Well, he could have engaged himself in these races. He didn't, because he knew he was going to lose. And secondly, and this may come as a big shock to him, so if you're in the White House and you're listening to our podcast, as I know you do secretly, you may want to whisper this in his ear. He is never going to be on the ballot again. It's over. He is not a factor anymore. And ideally or not, for Republicans probably are waking up this morning going, holy shit, we've bet everything on this guy, and now we're on our own. And on our own doesn't seem to be working out so well. So what's Trump's response? Well, it's the response of a lot of the folks on the far right who have realized they've made a deal with the devil here, and that is, let's cheat. He called it voting reform. That's pretty ominous. What does he mean? No more free and fair elections? Let's change voter ID laws to make it harder for people to vote. Let's gerrymander. Let's do everything that we can to, even get rid of the filibuster in the Senate, so maybe we can pass some other laws that make it harder for Democrats to win. They can't win fairly. There are more Democrats than there are Republicans. Among young voters, there are many more Democrats than there are Republicans. The issues that identify the Trump administration, whether it's immigration or the economy or any issue that they wanted to hold close to them, these issues are turning against them. And by the way, one of them is the government shutdown, which as of today, will become the longest government shutdown we ever saw. This did not help them. They thought it might, be able to be used against Democrats. It's not. Look at the scoreboard, folks. It's not. I suspect there is going to be a message there to a lot of Republicans, which is what we're doing isn't working. But the question is, who leads? Because they're all in this mindset of kowtowing to the great Oz in his, the rubble of what remains of the White House. And so, what happens over the course of the next year or two in that respect is going to be fascinating to watch. And I'm glad, Riley, that we have not forgotten the state I grew up in, America's finest state, the great state of New Jersey, home to, the Soprano. No, that's not real. It's Frank Sinatra, Bruce Springsteen.
Also not real.
Not real. But Tom Cruise. Bruce Springsteen is real. Just because you saw a movie doesn't mean he's not real. Tom Cruise, Chelsea Handler, Jason Alexander. I could go on. There's a lot of good coming out of New Jersey. Excellent pizza in New Jersey, but also good political results, because something happened in New Jersey that hasn't happened ever, which is somebody from the same party has won 3 consecutive elections. Right, Riley?
Yes, Democrat Mikey Sherrill, a U.S. representative, has won the New Jersey governor's race, succeeding fellow Democrat Governor Phil Murphy. The victory for the former Naval Academy graduate and prosecutor is seen as an indication of public sentiment regarding the Trump administration's policies. Sherrill defeated Republican Jack Ciattarelli, who was endorsed by President Donald Trump in a tightly contested race in the reliably blue state. Sherrill promised to bring a new day to New Jersey and stressed her commitment to the Constitution and democratic principles.
Yeah, and again, this is another one of these candidates. Mikey Sherrill doesn't have to go and say, I'm tough. She was a naval officer. She was a helicopter pilot. She was a prosecutor. She doesn't have to prove her bona fides. And in fact, if you're a prosecutor and you're running against a party that breaks the law, that's an advantage. If you're running against a party that's blowing up our alliances worldwide and embracing our enemies, and you come with a background in the U.S. Navy, that's an advantage. This woman is extremely accomplished. And this race was not the close horse race that everybody said it was going to be. She won by a lot. It is a good thing. And, for Republicans who are saying, well, New Jersey is becoming purpler and purpler. Nope. Same with Virginia. Not happening. It's becoming bluer and bluer. And I think that's really significant, particularly since a lot of the New Jersey suburbs are the kind of places where Republicans' messages on taxes and so forth might have played pretty well. But all in all, it rounds out a great day. Victories in California, New York, Virginia, New Jersey, a new mayor in Detroit, in local races in places as diverse as Georgia and Mississippi. Democrats won races they were not supposed to win. This is the first test of Trump 2.0. This is the first result that we've seen, even though it's an off-year election, of what the American people think. And while surely the Republican Party will spend the next year scrambling to come up with another message, the odds are it's going to be hard because Trump is still Trump. Mike Johnson is still Mike Johnson. They still want to hide the Epstein files. They still want to promote laws for billionaires. They still want to promote tariffs that are going to increase prices and slow down the economy. They're going to go and try and take control of the Fed and do things that are going to undermine global faith in the U.S. dollar. There is still going to be all the stuff that Americans saw this year, including expanded abuses by ICE and DHS that are going to turn people off. And they can't undo that. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of Republican members of Congress either not running or trying to distance themselves from Trump and MAGA. This is going to cause internal friction in the Republican Party and couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of white supremacists. Anyway, that was good news. We've been doing this a long time, and I've never seen a day where every story was good. That's not to say everything that's happening in the world is good news. It's certainly not. But this is certainly encouraging. We'll try to put this in a bigger context on our DSR regular show later today, and in Words Matter with Norm Ornstein tomorrow, and in our Need to Know podcast later in the week. You can also get good perspective on this from Greg Sargent at the TNR Daily Blast, which we produce. And we'll be back tomorrow to talk more about aftershocks of the election and more implications. So join us here at the DSR Network. And while you're at it, join us for our other podcasts on AI and trends that will undoubtedly affect the 2026 and 2028 elections on our Scylla Consciousness podcast and on our AI, Energy, and Climate podcast. If you like all this, support us at the DSR Network. Become a member. It's a few bucks a month. Help support independent media. And guess what? The message of independent media is getting through, and billionaires buying up all the big legacy media don't seem to have been able to change the views of people on the ground doing the legwork, voting, as we saw yesterday. We'll keep watching. Hope you'll be with us. Bye-bye.